here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned. Immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be the turn of the Bristol-based band, the Claytown Troupe, who I recently spoke to their lead singer and songwriter, Christian Riou, to find out more about life, love, poetry and all that other groovy stuff, about their career or his career in music, the creative arts, and also what he and the band are up to at the moment, as they've been playing some live dates with various support act with various other combos in the last couple of years. So you'll find out more about that and so much more. So after several minutes of interesting but casual chat, we get down to the exciting subject of the early formative years. Christian, it's over to you.
I had an older brother, so
right,
he'd sit me down and make me listen to Pink Floyd and then the early Bowie stuff and obviously all the glam rock. I was more of a Susie Quattro fan than a Gary Glitter fan, if I'm honest.
Yes, that
Slade, Slade. I always loved Slade, but I remember. I remember my parents buying like a new music system, like a GC music system. It came with one cassette. It's like one cassette, but a cassette recorder, with microphones, and that you could do your own thing. But it was La Bamba. That was the only cassette I had at that time for a while was La Bamba. Just listened to it over and over again. I always really loved early rock and roll.
Yes, well, absolutely.
That was always my. I think that's what brought me into it. As a kid. I mean, even in the 60s.
Yes.
The hearing the early rock and roll.
Well, I think it was. There was also those kind of. I remember there was other things on TV like the Monkees and the Banana Splits,
of course,
which were always very influential. And hearing Crazy Horses by the Osmonds seemed very thrilling and exciting and slightly edgy as well.
Oh yeah, no, I got mine signed.
Did you?
Yeah. We were filming Donny Osmond for something or other, and I've got some animation cells from the cartoon because the one of the animators, because it was done in Britain, the Jackson 5 and the Osmonds cartoons, and their older brother used to sell them in school for 2p a sheet, and I spent 10p and got like all 5 sheets, and it was like the scene of when the Osmonds came to London and went into Big Ben. But when I met Donny Osmond, I said, "Can you sign these?" And I had the record, the crazy. Can you sign? He was lovely, and I don't know what to do. I said, "Look, can I give you these?" I'd never seen them before, and I said, "Well, there might be like if you've got some kind of Osmonds museum." He said, "Oh no, he couldn't take it because he's obviously Jehovah's Witness, are they?"
That's the one.
And he couldn't take a gift. I couldn't give it to him. Not allowed to take it. And in retrospect, it's like, oh, that's all right. I'm glad I didn't in the end. I felt I should rather than I wanted to, I think. But
well, that's a very nice gesture. It's kind of I know that Susie Quattro had all those kind of classics like Devil Gate Drive and Can the Can, which always seemed very good. And then there was schools out. But I had an older brother who was 7 years older than me, but he was into prog rock. So it was like, but I'd sneak into his little bedroom and think, oh my God, while he wasn't there, because he said, don't go into my bedroom and play my records. But it seemed like a sort of like this other world of, Genesis and
yes,
and Wishbone Ash and Barclay James Harvest. So it was all those kind of records and Roger Dean Sleeves, and it was like, my God, what is?
Yeah, no, the Roger Dean Sleeves. I like my art, and but I was a huge horror film fan even when I was a kid. That was something. The comic books and horror movies. Not that I particularly ever saw any because you're too young, until they started putting them on the BBC. But no, I was always into the art, the whole art, and the art of the record sleeve as well. You'd look at the record sleeves. It was. I always remember when Diamond Dogs came out. I lived in Windsor then, and I can remember I walked to school past W.H. Smith's. And there'd be there was a whole window, and it must have been like a big Bowie fan in there. It was the whole window was Diamond Dogs, and I remember just stopping it, for like a week or so, staring at this amazing record, sleeping completely freaked out by it. But just like the artwork, and that was fantastic. But
Yes.
the Led Zeppelin. Old Jimmy Page lived in Windsor, and you'd hear the tales of him driving around in his Led Zepp Rolls Royce. So it's just, no one was grew up with it. I mean, it was just it's all alternative though when you think about it. You see, it's not like it was mainstream really. It was popular, but it was still alternative music. All those bands, it was all alternative rock. It wasn't. Most of my friends weren't that interested in music. They're more into football or football mostly, rugby.
Yes.
But it was. I didn't really have friends that were into music. It was all the older kids that I used to talk to music about. But the first gig I went to, I was 8 years old, and the house we lived in had a bunch of fields, like one of the parks in front of it. And in '72, they had the Windsor Arts Festival, and it was headlined by Hawkwind. And I just wandered over. I said to my mum, I said, I'm going to go over. She was like, be careful, come back when, before it's dark. I wandered over, and all these hippies, and there was naked people dancing. It was only about 1,000. I've read up on it, and there was only about 1,000 people there. But I remember walking right to the front of the stage and looking up, and there was, and it was a big bird made out of different coloured bulbs. It was just light bulbs, but in different colours, and then they turned it on just before Hawkwind played. And it was just like, oh wow, this is fantastic. And the Windsor Hells Angels came through the crowd, on chopper motorcycles, wearing all the gear, and you go, yeah, I quite like this environment. And 10 years later, that I was going to festivals, because more out of choice. But that, I think, is
Well, absolutely. I mean, that sort of being so that wasn't the Windsor Free Festival.
No. It was called Windsor. The Free Festival started, I think, in '73, and that was over in the other side, in the sort of the parks, like the Queen's Parks, which you could be 8 years old and just wander over there. And this was an arts festival, so it was a smaller event, but nonetheless, I mean, it was. I think the MC5 were booked to play it, but they didn't turn up.
Right. I would imagine Lemmy might have still been in the band.
He was, yeah. I knew Silver Machine because that was sort of a hit at the time.
Yes.
And so I kind of knew the name. It was, I think, probably my brother had told me, the song they did. And yeah, just stood looking at all these people, just absolutely loved it. And I thought, I like this environment, and I like these people, and everyone was a bit weird.
Well, I would imagine. So, well, it was kind of quite a time, because in this area, East Anglia, there was a lot of these kind of the fairs and festival movement started around 72, 73, where, I mean, they didn't have they were quite sort of big on their ideals and philosophy. So there would often be no electricity. So it was acoustic music, but lots of theatre groups and lots of kind of weird happenings. A lot of performance art. There was a guy called Bruce Lacey who used to do lots of stuff and would often end up slightly naked, throwing sort of, doing fire rituals. I mean, it was that kind of period. A lot of people living in communities and sort of, searching for ley lines and trying to sort of get spiritually turned on.
Which they still do.
Which they are.
Still, well, in fact, bigger than ever. Well, East Anglia was, what was it? It's the quiz of the week. That was, what was the TV up at the top there, wasn't it? The television
There was the Anglia television with Sale of the Century, but I don't think...
Century, yeah, I'd say. Yeah, so that was the knock-on effect of having a strong media, Anglia television. I mean, there would have been a knock-on effect to people being drawn to that, or being probably young people in the area as well. There would have been a sort of a degree of attention on it. Sadly, that all that kind of version of television is dead now, which is a shame. But I think it would have probably opened up a lot of creative people.
Well, yeah.
Again, then punk came along, and that generation that would have grown up under that then went aye, which again my brother did in 76. I remember him telling me all about punk in 76.
Right. So you were still quite young there. You were only 12, 13 when punk hit. Because I moved to Weston-super-Mare in the summer of 76, but he stayed up to do his exams, and then he came down and he said there's two important things this summer. And he said it's skateboards and punk rock. And he had one cassette, again, the one bloody cassette, and he played me this is punk rock. I don't know, it was probably Eddie and the Hot Rods. I think he'd been going to see them a lot, and the early Clash gigs. But and I remember thinking, this is good. It sounds like early rock and roll, and sounds like fast early rock and roll. Fine. So I considered myself into punk. But of course, it didn't exist as a thing, especially not in Weston-super-Mare. God, yeah, it didn't exist in Weston-super-Mare. No, I think we went there in the very early 70s. My parents in the late 60s, early 70s for a few years, because there were 3 boys they had, me being the youngest, used to either go to Pontins or Butlins, and we went to Weston-super-Mare on one of those trips.
That was Pontins in Sand Bay then.
Right, beachy. So what was it like?
Played there about 10 years ago.
What was it?
Someone tried to do a punk festival at what was the Pontins in because they do these ones in Butlins and Minehead and stuff, around
the Shine Festival.
Yeah, all those. But they did try to do a punky one with the Damned headline at Pontins, but I think it was about 10 years ago. But that was before the Damned had reinvented themselves in this new wave of how music is now. It's like I think there was only a couple of hundred people turned up,
right?
And now the Damned are playing in front of thousands. Again, like in America and stuff. And 10 years ago, that didn't exist. They play in pubs in Swindon, even then. And now. So that's what again with the Claytown things. I was sort of waiting for the opportunity to jump back on the horse, and and we got asked. I kind of preempted it, and I found a guitarist that was ready, that knew on social media, and but he'd seen us supporting the Cult at Wembley when he was like 20 and went out and bought all the records at the time. So he knew all the songs. So, then social media comes along and friend requests, and just a fan of the band, but he knows the songs back to front. So that was nice. And then I started piecing it together. And then like a year, this time last year, we were off and we did supported the Mission and the Chameleons. Just got the call, to come if we wanted to come.
Yes, jump on board. I know the au pairs have been have bizarrely slightly reformed, who were around in the very early 80s.
Yeah, I had one of those singles. Yeah.
Dear old Leslie. So yes, there is a market. But when you got to 16, which was probably about 1980, did you do O levels at that stage and go on for your A levels?
No, I should have done O levels, but I think when I was in the third year, my head of year said, She said, "Oh, you could do them if you wanted to, but I don't think you're going to make the effort to do them." so that was it. So you're doing CSEs, and then and I passed my 11 plus. I passed my 11. I was one of the. I think we were the last.
Yes.
My school, my class was the official last year, or might have been the last group of kids that took the old school 11 plus. And there's only 4 of us passed out of my whole junior year. And 4 of us went in, and of which I'm actually still friendly with a couple of them.
Right, because actually it was interesting because I think that was probably 1975, and there was only 3 who passed the 11 plus back then where I went to school. I wasn't one of them. But
well, I remember all I can remember about it was one of the questions was, "Cat is to kitten as dog is to calf, puppy." It's like the simplest of questions. But I wish I'd never done it. But then I went to Windsor Grammar School, but then at the second year, they took in the kids from the comprehensive school. But I just left at that point, and when my dad changed jobs, and so unfortunately I didn't stay for the fun and games, and ended up having to go down to live in the West Country. But it would have been quite fun to have seen all the lads that came in, how it changed. I know a lot of them went punk as well. There was a lot of them went to all the early gigs and things, which was a shame. I would have liked to have done that, all the London gigs. I used to come up and stay, but they had all the best records, and there was a brilliant record shop in Windsor that was a Gallop shop, but it was an independent. And he used to get all the picture sleeves, all the coloured vinyls, get the promo stuff that the labels would put through it. But it was a Gallop registered shop, so they just got all the best promos.
Right, God, that's quite handy, isn't it? Yes,
that was good. So it used to be good coming up and seeing my old friends, and then just going through records. They just had the best records.
Well, absolutely.
And would go jump on the train and go to seditionaries. I'd just be in awe of the clothes. Weston-super-Mare was a bit limited.
I would imagine, yes. Well, yes, a tourist town. But then, when you got to 16, then where did you then navigate your next move from that period?
Well, I'd already played my first gig at the 4th year school disco. My first band, a punk band, Faded Vision, we played the 4th year school disco, and there was a first year came to see it. It was a friend of a friend. He was only a first year, and he's Danny Farrant, who's the drummer in the Buzzcocks these days. And it was his punk eureka moment of coming to see this punk gig at at the school.
Yes,
quite funny. And I did that, and then I think that would have been, I don't know, early '79. I sort of formed the proper first school band, but we played our first proper gig supporting Vice Squad in Weston.
oh yes.
So I was only 15 or something, and suddenly playing with Vice Squad, and huge fights going off with the skinheads from Bristol and Weston. And so that was a baptism of fire. But I was going to gigs by then anyway. I'd already seen like the Ruts and the Damned and the Clash and everyone. So, and Tubeway Army even, loads of, variety of music.
Yes, well, it was an exciting time. And did you just naturally take to sort of being a lead vocalist?
Yeah, I did buy a synthesizer. I worked on the pier at Weston-super-Mare making the donuts and the candy floss for a couple of summers, and when I was at school. and it paid very well.
Yes.
And the owner, his son, went on to be the keyboard player in the Claytown Troupe later on. Funny enough, we didn't get on then, but a few years later, and I asked him to join the band 5-6 years later. But I earned very good money, and I bought my first equipment off the drummer from the band Racy, who lived round the corner.
Brilliant.
And, some girls will, some girls won't.
Classic.
Number one. And so I just caught it when they just cracked it. So all their pub gear that they had, because they came up as just a rock and roll covers pub band, and like a little PA and Les Pauls and microphones. I just bought all this gear off the drummer because they just had it in the garage, because they were living the life at the time. And then that was it. So I was the kid in town who was in this punk band with gear.
It reminds me of that film which David Essex was in during the sort of early 70s. They made two, didn't they? That Will Be the Day and then Stardust.
Yeah. They filmed that in the Isle of Wight, didn't they? In a Butlin style holiday park, which is now derelict. Funny enough, you can go there and wander around, but that's where they filmed that. But that was it. I went to college. I went to art college, and I just was doing the music, and the punk band kind of finished, but then that put me on the map in town with all the older kids, and there was a nice bunch of bands out there, and a couple of them, the older boys that did singles, are actually really collectible. Like in Japan now, they buy up those odd British releases, sort of homemade 7-inch records, and I just was hanging out with guys older than me, and then go, so you go to gigs with them, and we're going to a lot of the early, the gigs. We used to follow bands like Theatre of Hate and go see them a lot. The Bunnymen, very into the Bunnymen in the early days, and Certain Ratio. As much as I didn't really go to see many heavy rock stuff, that wasn't my niche. I was more into just the alternative, and if there was a rock band that was a bit more alternative, great, But then West Country though, festivals again goes back to Glastonbury, WOMAD. Everybody just went to the festivals. Stonehenge,
absolutely. Did because Glastonbury started in the very early 70s. Then there was a big gap, wasn't there? And then it sort of reappeared. Was it 84?
No, it was like 82. Was the first one I went. 80, and I went to the WOMAD, the first WOMAD. That was at Shepton Mallet. I was 82. And then, last time I went to Glastonbury was 85. And it was like 25,000, 30,000 people. I said, that's too many. Now it's 250,000. I can't comprehend that. It's like, it used to be fun. It was like Stonehenge, like the Wild West. It's just. And the Elephant Fair down in Cornwall. That was
the Elephant Fair. Yeah, that was quite famous, wasn't it?
Oh, that was great. That one, yeah. That was something special. And again, an alternative festival, so the Cure, and there'd be the Banshees and the Cure, and like the reggae bands that you'd see there, Talisman and stuff, the Bristol band. But that was a really good festival.
Did you have much of a reggae scene in Bristol during the 80s? Because I know there was a band called the Rhythmanites. Is there a band called? There
was Talisman, and I used to go to the kind of squat parties of Massive Attack, who became not Massive Attack, Wild Bunch they were called. They became Massive Attack.
Yes.
They used to have these kind of squat parties, but there was a club called the Tropic Club in St Paul's, which is where the black community were based, and it was. They used to put on good bands there, good gigs. It was a small club, but we started playing there in '86. But the gig of the band booker, she was a friend's sister, and it was a little bit more geared towards reggae nights, but they allowed her to put on. They realised there was money with them, our kids, with the indie bands and what have you. But she just used to let us, me and my mate, we could choose the band. We'd put on bands that we could get the support. So we'd get involved with putting on the Fields of the Nephilim, and put on and bands like Chiefs of Relief, which was Paul Cook and Matthew from Bow Wow Wow, and Paul Cook from the Pistols. And so we'd get it to do the support, and we'd sort of help promote it. But so that was quite a good club. And I remember doing some DJing. We used to run a little alternative club, but the stuff we would play in Bristol then wasn't really that tapped into the wider scene. Bands like the Cult and stuff, fine, but we were going to see Balaam and the Angel, or with House Gang or Sex Gang Children, or that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You play that in the club, and the Bristol Goths at the time were like, we just want to hear "Spin Me Round." we just want something from Mute Records,
Right. Yes. So when sort of
DVOD.
Yeah, God. When 83 appeared, there was a sort of a bit of an indie pop moment, wasn't there? On a very simplistic level, there was obviously punk, post-punk, then you had that goth, there was New Paisley, that whole scene from various bands from the West Coast, Psychobilly, and then there was that kind of 83, 84, there was the year of the Smiths started to sort of, create quite a scene. What was that like? You were at that age, weren't you? Where
no, it was Bunnymen. We were all about the Bunnymen after Theatre of Hate. I like Southern Death Cult, but it was the Bunnymen really from about 1980 when I started hearing them, and bands like The Sound.
I was going to mention The Sound, yes.
Yeah, no,
Adrian, yes.
Yeah, sad. That was one of my favourite bands. I still listen to them. And but I think for me, it was at the end of '83. I saw the Death Cult, and it just I just went. Oh, it was like a light bulb went off. And the Southern Death Cult, I like the Southern Death Cult, and I knew about Aki, the drummer from Southern Death Cult. He'd been a punk promoter in Bradford, and he put on one of the Western punk bands. The guys are a bit older than me, and they came back to Western telling tales of the crazy times and all the Bradford punks and Aki the promoter, and so I already knew who he was. So when the Southern Death Cult came out, I was like, Aki from Bradford. Oh yeah, I've heard of him. And but when you saw them, they were very cool, and it didn't seem. I thought, I don't know, something about it that you didn't feel you could emulate the Southern Death Cult. Whereas the Death Cult, I looked and went, I could do that.
Right.
Something, I don't know, I think because it went a bit straighter, rockier maybe, and Duffy, I'd known, been watching at Theatre of Hate, it got a bit sort of, okay, it was like a punk moment for me when, yeah, I like the unique alternative element, but that's a lifestyle as much as anything. That's that kind of the squats and the punk scene, and I used to know those bands like Disorder and Chaos UK, or those kind of squat punk dog on a string bands, that were very Bristol centric, the Amoebics or that crew.
Oh yes.
I used to go to parties and things with all those people around, and and obviously.
Yeah. So, what bands was it? in that area that people like Blythe Power came from, the sort of the
They were
West Country.
They were Welsh, I think. Like Power Welsh.
Yes,
I think
Joseph
I think
Porter.
they were Welsh. There wasn't a lot really. I mean, it was, there was a lot of power pop punk bands, and obviously Tears for Fears were great. And then almost like Tears for Fears, and Teardrop Explodes, or that all the Liverpool bands. But again, Tears for Fears, it was like they were just ultra local musicians. They'd been in bands. Everyone kind of knew who they were because they'd been in other bands, and they were all well educated, very middle class, very well trained. And us oiks in Weston-super-Mare, there was less choice. So, and that's why I became a singer. Right? It was just I didn't, my brother had been in a band in about 75. Tried to be in a band with, a couple of guys that went on to be quite prominent on the anarcho-punk scene later, but, grammar school boys. So it was just, probably trying to be a prog rock band at the time. And I ended up moving to Bristol in, 84, 85, and just getting up to the city.
Right.
You had bands like the Blue Aeroplanes and Brilliant Corners, and all those kind of bands, the local bands. But none of them at that stage. Automatic Dillamini, who PJ Harvey was in later, but no one was really cutting it at all. And again, even in the punk period, the Excerpts, the Cortinas, there was a few ones that jumped out here and there, but there was not an awful lot came out of that area at that time. It was that you'd have sort of one-offs, but it wasn't the scene, but as such at all. And I liked the scene that I saw building up from the back of the New Model Army and Play Dead, and after seeing the Death Cult. Then I was done with punk. I'd been done with punk a few years, but then when I saw the Death Cult and went, hang on a minute, actually, this is like this has got the vibe of a new punk thing. It's achievable. It seemed achievable. You could never dream of being the Sex Pistols because they were just. You couldn't imagine being the Sex Pistols because they're so unique. Whatever anyone says about them being put together by Malcolm McLaren, it's like, well, he put together the most unique pieces. It's like that's not random. That is just. If there's some kind of mystic force involved in it, it was all over that. You could never recreate that. So even though punk went, yeah, you can go out, just do it. You don't need the skill set. If you don't want, just get up and shout. That was great. Play 3 chords, brilliant. And I think I did violin for about a year for some odd reason. I don't know. My mum decided I should go play violin when I started grammar school, and it was like, oh my god! And yet my brother had a Woolworths audition electric guitar, and instead of me saying no, I want a guitar, I don't want a fucking violin. And then going from a grammar school in Windsor to a comprehensive school in Weston-super-Mare, turning up holding a violin, that was it. That was one. I never carried it again. Most of the kids never even seen a violin. and then all I wanted was a pair of Dr. Martens at that point, and that was the new path. But O-level exams, though, going back to the exams, I only actually did half my exams because when you do the first halves, and then they do the second halves back then. And but I went to see the UK Subs at the Fulham Greyhound. Went up on the train, saw the UK Subs do a matinee gig at the Fulham Greyhound. And in those days, everybody was spitting at the bands, still. And And I ended up on stage, sat on stage, get pushed up onto the stage and sat on the stage for the whole gig. But it was like raining God. And then Deaf as a Post came out. Again, this is fantastic. This is what I want to do. And but then the next day, I started to get really ill and collapsed, and I developed a streptococcal infection and ended up in hospital for a week and nearly died.
Oh my God!
Because someone must have been infected, someone's bloody spit. But so I didn't do half my exams. So they just gave me I had to give me a generic mark. So I failed most of my exams, went back to college and did O levels and art, the art college as well, just to prove the point rather than feeling that I needed, qualifications. Yes. I've always thought qualifications it's a choice. I mean, my children have got qualifications and masters and what have you, but in those days, now it's perhaps a little bit more of a path. But back then, my brother went to uni, but I wasn't interested in that. I was interested in the creative arts, and you weren't, it wasn't about qualifications with that. It was just about how you behaved.
Yes.
And some people were good artists, but you had others that were completely maverick, just great thinkers. Again, I know a few that have gone on to be really successful, who you would never believe that they would. Photographers and that came up through the same college, and again, Western Supermarkets. There's obviously a very famous unknown artist in the world. But he did his Dismal Land exhibition in Western Supermare.
Right. Who was that?
The Banksy.
Banksy, right. Yes.
Didn't choose Western Supermare, that was a thought out choice.
Brilliant.
But again, very linked. The whole area is so linked to just I don't know. It's almost like kind of a capped expression, which makes people do more. I mean, in my comprehensive school, there's a guy a year below went on to be head of gaming at internationally for Sony.
Right.
He's head of all gaming for Sony. Just some guy from Western Supermare, and you just kind of, there's a whole bunch of people like that went out into the big wide world and have done things, whereas the grammar school people, far less. It's quite interesting. The ones that were taken down the pure academic route, as opposed to yobs just being told when you're 16 you're going to go work in the Clark shoe factory.
Right. Yes, the classic factory is. Yeah, that was the same in this area. So then, when did you decide and form the band? When was this kind of the moment?
The Claytown thing, I'd been, I was in the local bands up until towards the end of '83, and then again after I saw that Death Cult gig, it was like, hang on a minute, I was doing keyboards then. I was actually demoted. So not demoted is the wrong word. I was the new guy came in who was like the local hero, and all singing, all dancing, all songwriting. Decided he wanted to be the singer because he was the local dude, and to have him in your band was like, fine, well, I'll do keyboards. So I went out and bought a Juno 6 and a Selena string synth because the sound used them. Used a Selena, and and I thought, no, I've always liked keyboard music. I've always dug it, and even in my punk band, I bought a synthesizer back in '79. So it was. I thought, no, I like I think electronic music is going to be huge, and I was starting to get really interested in that side of things. And so I did that for a couple of years, actually. And I wasn't singing. And but what it did was it tuned my ear by spending so much time with the keyboard. I actually learned to sing, whereas before I was a good shouter.
Right.
And then that band, they kicked me out early '84, I think it was. And by the Easter of '84, they decided that, we're going to get someone else in, and we need somebody a bit more technically proficient. But the drummer from that band was Andy Holt, who went on to be the drummer in Claytown Troupe, and then they kicked him out as well. He went off traveling for a while, and then I thought, I want to do the singing. I'm going to learn how to write songs, and I'm going to write lyrics again, and I'm going to train myself to sing. And I started getting more interested in that. And then there's the story that I think this one's got on Wikipedia, where and it's a true story though, that I went to see this clairvoyant, and in Weston, this old lady that everyone's mum used to go and see, and she I think in '78 she'd said to my mum, your son, I can see him. He stood on a stage, and people are clapping and cheering, and and I, obviously I was, yep, that sounds good to me. But four would have been 5 years later. I'm still like, oh, hang on a minute, and that hasn't quite happened yet. And I went in, and she said, "Oh, it's just this little old lady, didn't know me from Adam. Just, well, you do music, don't you?" And she said, and they're telling me you've got to call it Clayton Troop or Clayton Trio, Clayton Troop. And I was like, Claytown Troupe, okay, I'll call it that then. And she said, look, you're going to do the music. She said, you're going to do well. It will never be massive, but you'll get to see America, and it'll change your life, and you'll do well, and you will affect a lot of people. And you go, and then that's, I was 20 years old. You go, yes, that's what I want to do. and then so that's where the name came from, and it gave me this idea that there is that I had some path to tread, and then just slowly over the next couple of years, pieced it back together. And a year later, asked Andy Holt if he was actually trialing out for the Cult at the time. He nearly got into the Cult, and he didn't get that, so he came with me. And then, oddly, 5 years later, then we were obviously playing with the Cult in Wembley.
My God, that's amazing.
Yeah, and the fact the guitarists from the bands before, the guy wanted to be the singer, he was asked to try it out for what became the Death Cult before Billy Duffy was asked, and the other guitarist in the band, he was asked to try out for Theatre of Hate before Billy Duffy was asked. So it's like I've been with these guys. This cult thing just kept cropping up all the time. It was like always hearing about these characters, this and the Ian Asbury, and it was like, little did I know, back in, I'd be tied with them for probably the rest of my life because of doing that Sonic Temple tour with them,
Yes.
Being linked to it, whereas I already knew an Aki from some. It's almost, I like all the kind of mystical worlds and mystical thinkings, and that's something that I do rather enjoy. But anyway, we trugged along, became a popular little Bristol band on the alternative scene, kind of indie alternative, gothy, rocky, sort of like a small town Simple Minds. And it did okay, and we were getting a bit of interest, and we did a few decent support slots, a few London gigs, Dingwalls, and And then we played at a gig at the Mean Fiddler, and there was 4 people turned up, and one was my friend Chris, who happened to be passing from Bristol, who now owns the Fleece in Bristol. And he was passing, he was on work, so he came along. There was another 2 people that followed bands around and had seen us, and she went on to run the borderline off Charing Cross Road, and I think she's at the Scala now.
Right.
And then another guy, my friend Tony, he was the first A&R guy I met in '84 in Bath at some gig, and he went on to sign. He was involved with signing Simple Minds and stuff, but he worked for Elektra Records, and we'd go and play him the recordings, and he gave me loads of advice for a couple of years. I'd come and stay with him, and he was great, and we're still friends after all this time. But he was at the gig, and he said to me, he said, "You've really got something there, but you've got to get rid of your guitarist. Just not the guitarist you've been doing it with a couple of years. So he just hasn't got it. You've got to get rid of him." And I realised that myself anyway. So I came back. That was in the summer of '87, and it would have been about the September of '87. And so I had to ask him to leave, and got back. It's just not working. 4 people in London. It's like, oh God, this is it. This is going nowhere. And then the bass player at the time, it was a girl, and she left because she was so offended that we got rid of the other guy. They were good songs, and in fact, Bristol Archive Records actually put the demos out. I did it out of respect to them. I didn't have to, but thought, no, let's put it out there for people to hear out of respect to those, because they're actually really good. It was a good little band, and then I went back to the clairvoyant lady, and I walked in, and she went, "You do music, don't you?" I said, "Yes." And she said, "But there's only 3 of you now." And I was like, "What the fuck?" There's just there's no way on God's earth, the word she chose. I'm like, okay. And she said, "Oh, yeah." She said, the other 2 that you need, well, okay. One is in Bath, and one you already know, and he's a teacher. And I'm like, I don't know teachers. The lifestyle that I had then wasn't really well. You wouldn't have had a teacher around my lifestyle. it wouldn't have been good on their record. And so I went to Bath with the keyboard player, and there's an advert in the local music shop, on the board there, into New Model Army, Stranglers. Pulled it off, and then that was Paul Watson, who became the bass player of that then. He was only 16. And I was in Bristol walking along, and I bumped into Ben Bennett, who became the guitarist with the band, because he'd been in one of our support bands that we were friends with, and they'd split up, a goth band. And I said, "Well, what are you doing now?" And, I haven't seen him for a couple of months. And he said, "Oh, I'm teaching karate." And I went, "Oh, okay. Do you want to come and try out with the Claytown? I got rid of Keith, needed a guitarist." He went, "Absolutely, yeah, yeah." So he came, and then that would have been, and me and Rick, the keyboard player, wrote the bulk of the songs in a month. So that would have been late '87. And then we played the first gig, I think it was something like February of '88 at the Thekla in Bristol, the boat, which is
Right.
Thekla, which used to be owned by a guy from Bonzo Dog Doodah band. And then it still exists. I think it's probably the Academy or someone owns it now, but some corporate setup. But back then it was just still a boat full of crazy hippies. And so we played a gig relatively early on, and just trudging along. We did a few supports, got ourselves a little bit back on our feet with some of the following people that were starting to pick up on it. And then in the summer, we did some demos at a studio in Oxfordshire that Play Dead used to use. And then we said, well, let's do a video. We all chipped in and borrowed money left, right, and centre, and made a video company that just done videos for Morrissey and Pop Will Eat Itself. And I just went in, slapped 1,500 quid cash down. So can you make us a video? And they said, all right. Then I heard they were cokeheads, so I figured, well, cash is always going to be a good way of getting a blag. And yeah, they gave us a whole film crew. We made like a 16mm proper music video, which I then took around almost like a demo, but like a visual demo. Now that's obviously standard, but back then it was they just have your dad's someone's VHS camera filming rubbish, but it was.
What was the song you did for that?
That was the song Prayer. It was the song Prayer. We did Prayer, the song Hey Lord, and Real Life in that studio. It was out in the country, and then we did the song Prayer, and then literally. That was the 8th of the 8th, 88. We made the video. So it's a mystic day again. Goes back to some strangeness, and then we by the early October had 10 record deals on the table.
Jeezy, crazy!
Literally, like Beggars Banquet offered me a big deal. Island offered a bigger one. Chrysalis. Who else was there? Little labels like Plastic Head, and a whole bunch of little stuff. Food. We went. We saw, and
did Glass Records approach you at all? Was it Glass Records? There was
no, I didn't know. I didn't know them. No, it just it was big. Just aimed for the big record labels, but then everyone went, yep. And we got some. Gigs at the Fulham Greyhound again, and so people came to see us. But we were signed to Ireland in a week. We're the fastest band. They don't do the history. It's the trouble with the Claytown Troupe is it achieved more for other people than itself.
Right.
There's a lot of people off the back of it, and there's a lot of history, and it achieved a hell of a lot, but because we only got into like the top 50 or something, because the kind of people who buy Claytown Troop records were buying it from Bob's Record Shack. They weren't buying it from W.H. Smith's or Woolworths, where the Gallup stuff was. It was, it was that audience wouldn't be seen dead in the mainstream shots, but that's where the Gallup tills were, So we'd be selling tens of thousands of records to. Whereas Ireland, I remember that they had an act and it sold 4,000 records, got to number 14. I think we sold 40,000 records and got to number 89.
Right. God, that is so weird, isn't it?
So it was, a whole different vibe of a band. And again, that whole different kind of scene. There was a lot of that. There was a lot of that alternative scene, the followers scene, that they were kind of discarding a lot of the mainstream ways of buying your product. And I think that's the first generation of the internet.
Yes,
really, that just went, yeah, I'm not doing it like I'm told to do it. I'm buying my record in Andy's record shop in Derby. It's like I'm not buying it in Woolworths.
Yes. And did at that point, at the sort of the kind of great musical moment during the 80s, because there was what helped a lot of bands during that period was the unemployment benefit or the job seekers allowance and enterprise allowance schemes. I mean, that was kind of almost the indirect grant.
Yeah, I did it. Yeah, £1,000. You needed £1,000, and then Margaret Thatcher paid your rent.
Housing benefit and council tax. So
Yeah,
how did everyone get £1,000? Because the dole might have given you £28 or £32 a week. Suddenly to go, oh, £1,000,
yeah, it's
here you go.
£32 a week. Yeah, well,
How,
I mean, I remember with the Claytown Troupe, the Ben, the guitarist, he was working. He was worked on a golf course or something. Andy, the drummer, was qualified as a plumber at Western-super-Mare Technical College. Paul, the bass player, he was 17 when we signed to Island Records. His mum had to sign the deal because he was too young.
right.
Okay, imagine that, 17, signing a 6-album deal with Island Records for a small fortune. And he just lived at home. He didn't need money. He just lived at home. And
Did you have a manager at that stage, or did you?
No, I did it all. And we met this guy Abbo, who'd been the singer in the band UK Decay, one of the sort of early punk goth crossover bands. And he had a little indie label. He also offered us a singles deal, but we already knew that these major labels had all gone a little bit crazy for us, and so we turned it down. But I did the Island deal, and just had an awful lot of money. I think I'd been signing on about 7 years by that point, because I was at college and then moved to Bristol. You just signed on, and just but it gave you then the opportunity to explore. Obviously, as a musician for many years, my tax was 40%. So I paid back whatever I took out. So that's okay.
Yeah. So how do you navigate a 6-album record deal with a major label? I mean, that's quite daunting, isn't it, for somebody who's
Again, some kind of mystic force somehow. We just the right time, right place, and they came to the A&R guy. Oh, Chrysalis, that was another one that offered us, tried to sign us, Chrysalis Records, and it just they just came to see us and went mad for it. And the band was just, I'd spent a lot, obviously been bands 10 years by then nearly, and I realised the whole alternative. There was a space for a band that could kind of combine that all the scenes a little bit, that had a bit of the independent indie vibe about it, had a cult charm, Simple Minds rock stadiumness about it, and that's the Claytown Troupe. What it was Marmite. It was one of those bands. People tell me now, they haven't listened to the record for ages, go, it makes sense now. I can hear your music, like I understand it. Whereas at the time it was like it's all right. I think I had it on a cassette. It was like, my mate liked you, so it's all right. But which is why we never made that much bigger jump that some of the grunge bands I saw. So I was there at the beginning of grunge with all those Pearl Jams, and I was hanging out with all those people when they were, before they even had bands. Some of them,
Yes.
And, it's like, so I've seen people go from 0 to 1 million in in a matter of months, and whereas the Claytown say would just. It makes sense more to people now than it did then. It's more of a listenable record, perhaps than it was then. I don't know. Again, I think because it was so eclectic, and back then you didn't really have that. It was still very much lots of tribal music there, and lots of set styles. The kids now, they listen to all kinds of things. They listen to old, new, all the different genres. That, and that's what I wanted to get out of Claytown, was like an eclectic mix of might a bit of Echo and the Bunnymen there, or a bit of In Excess and a bit of Hothouse Flowers. The bands I was going to see, but then also, bands like the Nephilims or the Missions, or those bands. Yeah, that we'd be going to see them and go, oh, I like that bit.
Yeah.
I just cherry picked and literally, life-changing thing. So for the next few years of it, then suddenly wallop, and again, no manager. We got Abbo, and then Abbo went on to. I mean, he was involved initially with Carter, the Unstoppable Sex Machine, and then we lent him the money to make the Sheriff Fatman record.
Right.
So he released that, and that was our money. We actually loaned him the money to make that, and I think we loaned him the money for the guys who became the Sundays to do demos.
Blimey.
I think we did. Yeah, we were.
Yes, I suppose they were around, weren't they?
I think Jiminy or whatever they were. He was involved with. He'd stuck a record out with them. So, but it was so much money, and because we'd come from not having any money in the other end of the country, where there was, it was a the end of the road kind of town at that time. Not anymore so much, but it was like, no, I just let's use this wisely. We didn't go out and blow it. We used it cleverly.
Yeah.
We did all our own merchandising. I got Chris Blackwell. I said we want that taken out of the record deal, because you'd have the merchandise element in there, and he dropped it because he liked the bands.
Right.
Chris Blackwell went, fine, just sign them. And they said, yeah, we'll have them supporting you. But they said they'd get us supporting you too. That was what swung the island. It was the deal, really. They're like, yeah, we'll have you on tour with you two next year. And okay, that's good. Because again, early 80s, U2, the Boy album, fantastic.
Yes.
Brilliant records, and good band live, and just that was. But that never happened because they decided to stop touring.
I know, that's tricky. When the album came out, how was it received? Were you pleased with the results of it?
Yeah, I mean, music, all the kind of rock papers, the Kerrangs and Raw at the time, those kind of influential rock, and the just top marks for it. They understood it, and there was a new wave of journalists that were looking for a new breed of rock. Again, pre grunge and post Aussie, and
Yes.
and Def Leppards and those bands, that kind of new wave of metal. Yeah, you had Metallica, and there was, some of the American bands were coming through. That Voivod, all kinds of different bands are coming through that were cool, and that's that kind of alternative, Your Faith No Mores and things. So everyone was looking for something as a step aside from those LA, I suppose, because Guns N' Roses. I mean, Guns N' Roses were very much connected with the cult.
Well, yes, absolutely.
So they took a lot from the cult, and so we just hit that right little moment. The Enemy. I think Steve Lamacq wrote us. Yeah, he did some good reviews for us early on, and there was Andrew Collins and Steve Lamacq, and they were supportive. I think because that was the Mean Fiddler gig that we did when there's 4 people. Exactly a year later, we built the following back up, and there was 150 people there, and the heads of Island Records. And after the gig, they put me in the dressing room, stood at the door, wouldn't let me out, and I had the big heads of this huge record company said, "We're signing you tomorrow." And we said, "You're not leaving this room unless you send us your sign." I'm like, fine, I better sign off then.
Well, yes, absolutely. And did you tour Europe and America at that stage as well?
We did. We got to Europe in '89 for a few weeks, supporting the Godfathers, because the band the Godfathers really huge over there. People don't realise how big they were. Very popular. Still are. I mean, they're still a great band, and we went on tour with them over there, and that was a riot a minute. That was kind of out of control, crazy times. But we sold. I mean, we're constantly touring and constantly playing, and we'd sell out the marquee and all that kind of stuff. And it was always that thing of how the hell just sold out the marquee. How does that happen? I never even. I never. It's not. I didn't imagine it. It was just like, wow, this is fantastic. I almost didn't think by then. I was just probably not planning so much for the future, either musically or with the band, than I had been, because I was just too busy enjoying the success of it, And again, it was financially, turned your life around, and then getting used to all the attention. So you think you want attention, and then suddenly it's like you experience the real attention, and people you don't know come up to you and know who you are and know all about you, and and ones that come up who hate you and but know who you are.
Yes, God, that's so weird, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah, but again, quite a degree of training of that. I think going back to the old days in Western, but starting out as a young kid in bands, it was everyone's this, who is this usurper? This mouthy little kid. So got used to people being either commending you for it or being aggressive.
Yes.
It's just a bigger version of that. So there is I think I kind of breezed through that. I'm getting used to doing interviews and seeing your face on telly. And I think we did the first single you see was Prayer, and that got on the chart show.
Wow.
It just flew out after the chart show. It was like 4 million people used to watch it then, and they showed the Prayer video, and it was first single. We were in Europe at the time playing, and just being told that it's gone in the charts, and you're like, what? I think it was only like 76 it went to or something, but it sold it tens of thousands, and it was like, holy Christ! I mean, you're so busy going, well, how did this happen? And I think you just go a bit day to day a little bit then.
Well, I would imagine.
This gig tonight's got to be brilliant, and I've got to you've got to start thinking about the moment a lot more than so.
Yes. And how did you then, as the decade, finished and a new one started, and obviously the Seattle grunge scene was building and we had the dance scene, how did you then sort of start navigating, the second album? Was that quite tricky with the label?
Well, the Island thing, we were always a victim of the business. Unfortunately, Island got bought out by Polygram at the time, I think 1990 or something, and they replaced a load of people. A load left. Ron Fair, who'd signed us and produced the album, who went on to be one of the biggest music business executive moguls. Heads up music for Disney now, but he went on to discover and produce like Black Eyed Peas and Christina Aguilera.
Right.
That was a massive Claytown Troupe fan. It was him that was behind signing us and and producing us. But they got taken over, and then new people came in. A new head of A&R came in, and he said to me, he said, look, he said, "You're a really good rock band, Claytown Troupe." And I think we packed out the Astoria by then. You know, we were doing okay, and we started to shift units in America, and we'd just done the Cult tour, and it was all looking quite good. And we'd sold 50,000-60,000 albums or something here, and then he said, "But the one thing is, I don't like rock music." And you're like, okay, your new head of A&R doesn't, and he went on to put together the soundtracks for working title films, and it's all Motown and soul,
right?
Which I just, which I love. I love that music. I love ska, and and reggae, and I used to go see a lot of the reggae bands in Bristol, and so my music was always wide, and the head of A&R, whose music taste was blinkered, it was like, fuck this. So we got in touch with Ron Fair, and then he was head of A&R at EMI in America. He said, "Leave, I'll sign you here." So we signed to EMI America, and after 18 months, and then we just went and signed a massive, even bigger record deal with EMI in America. Went to New York and recorded the second album at the Hit Factory. And Keith Richards was in the studio upstairs. I used to steal all his fruit.
Well, absolutely.
Got told off.
Oh yes, but
he was eating it.
Yeah, but did at that stage, did you have to pay anything back to the Virgin Island?
No, it's recoupable, non-returnable. They can take it. They can take a cut, but it's a big tax thing. They always make sure bands have got a debt there, so they can put it against the tax. You've got hundreds of bands out there that will owe £250,000 to a label.
Right.
They'll never pay it off because you're only ever. It's a retail thing essentially. So you're only paying back a portion of your sales if you're selling a record, an album, then for a fiver.
Yes.
You're not paying back a fiver, you're paying back a percentage of that. The band gets, 10-12% or whatever it is. And then the record label, then put their costs in. So you're paying back like a bloody pound,
Right.
And then what I did discover is I was in Tower Records in Piccadilly in the late 90s, and went in and I saw that Claytown Troupe had its own section, because we used to have our own section in record stores, even in Tower Records in America. You'd see it in record shops around the world, which is always fun. And but Tower Records, it was a stack of the album CDs, and then I thought, oh, that's fun, but I didn't buy one. And then a few days later, I thought, you know what, I'm going to go buy one. It's got short hair then. It's like, I was working at the film industry at that point, so I was a bit, wasn't dressing like a rock star. And I thought, well, yeah, I'll buy one. They were, no one's going to think that's a bit naff, and they'd all gone. I was like, oh, okay. So I went and talked to the manager dude there, and I said, oh, the Claytown Troupe, and I told him my story, and he went, oh no, we sold loads of your records, and he pulled it up on the system. He said, we've been selling 1,000 of your records, all through the 90s, a year. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, yeah, they're brought in as imports from South America. So they're brought in, so then the costs are higher, so you never pay it back, because every record that you sell, and this imagine what it's like for there's other bands out there that so they bring them in as imports. So this is what this is. I've never looked into it deeper, but this is what this Tower Records guy said. Oh yeah, no, it's common. They bring it in, they make it in factories and import it from factories in South America. So then they will then put the even though it's their business, and they then will up the costs. So you literally, unless you sell 1 million records, you're never going to properly pay back because they're only taking such a small amount out of the sales. So yeah, I think we probably still own Universal Music, but it's only for that record. But they technically own the mechanicals of it. The actual, I could go out and re-record those songs again because the sort of ownership of it reverts.
Yeah,
It leaves the label, but they own those recordings. I think they've got them up on Spotify and other areas, but it's their job to then promote it more. That they could get that money back, take some Claytown Troupe song and get it put in a Netflix series, would sync it. Then maybe you pay it back, and then I know bands that have. I mean, EMF, when Unbelievable came out, I mean, they paid back the record company within 6 months.
blimey.
And then renegotiated and got a whole load of money, the Little Devils. And, well, I'm friends with them, and, they're an example of a hit record, selling a few million out there and, setting them up for life. And, but Claytown Troop, it's not a pop band,
No.
Wasn't,
So when you had the second album come out, I mean, did you relocate to America to record it at the Hit Factory at that stage?
Yeah. We spent a lot of time. I'd been going over a bit since '89, because we were ticking along, and the sort of there was a lot of Anglophile, goth, alternative, indie DJs out there at clubs like the Limelight that would be scouring the music press, for records and the bands to play, looking for new stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And so we were ticking along over there. And again, I knew the Pearl Jam guys. I knew when just after they were Mother Love Bone, and I used to hang with them in for a bit, which is why we ended up playing with them, because originally I said to them, why don't you come and support us in Britain to get your toe in the water? And then, like, within 6 months, they're the biggest band in the world, so we supported them.
Yes.
But in saying that, I was telling someone earlier, first time I met Eddie Vedder, he told me that he had to sing along to the Claytown Troupe record for his audition.
Oh, nice.
They put records on in their rehearsal room, and they wanted him to. How would you sing? How would you sing this song?
This track, yes.
Yeah, and sort of, and that was him told me that. So it's like, it sounds like a mad story, but he said, no, they play your stuff all the time in the rehearsal room. So that's a legacy of the Claytown Troupe, is that there is it had this influence. It created people like our management, these management companies who went on to do EMF, and discover bands like Pavement and Big Cat Records and their management company. And then there was a girl, Jackie, who used to follow us around with like a kit bag. The kids used to hitchhike all around the country after us. And I got her first job working for the manager, answering the phone. And she's now Jackie Rice, who owns Domino Records.
Wow.
So no Claytown Troupe, maybe no Domino Records.
Jesus, that's so cosmic. That is amazing.
Yeah, I like all that idea. I've got loads of stories like that, mind, and different people helped out, and there's a few out there that return the favour, and but the music business being what it is, there's many out there that don't, that rewrite their story to owe no one anything.
Who owns the narrative? Then sort of then 92, what happens to the band? Is this
Well, we did the Pearl Jam tour, and that was very successful. And the biggest mistake though we made was after we brought out a song called Razor Love, which did very well, and we did the Astoria. Andy, the drummer, he said, well, we got to come off the road and concentrate on the new stuff. And on one hand, I thought, yeah, that makes sense, and get our feet back on the ground a bit, because, we'd not stopped for a long time. But in retrospect, I realized he just wanted to go home for a while to his wife, and what we should have done is we should have been pushing to do the festivals. We didn't play Reading because that was owned by the Mean Fiddler at that time. And after we did that Mean Fiddler gig, the one we got signed at, the promoter there, who had links to Minehead, and I knew his sister in Western Superman, we switched to playing the Marquee, and he rang up and said, I gave you those gigs, I gave you the chance. Like, what are you talking about? And you double crossed me, and like, it's just a gig, you should be coming and playing here, and not the Marquee. But unfortunately, they were running the Reading Festival, and he refused to book us for Reading in '89, and said it's not the kind of music we want at Reading. Which it was absolutely the music they wanted.
Yes.
And I remember it was the Mission headlining that year, and we should have been on the bill. But the DJ from the Camden Feet, who was DJing before the band came on, he played the Haylord single before the Mission came on.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at the audience, and there was an awful lot of people singing the song, the followers that knew the song already, that had sort of, had not been released at that point, but just people had started to pick up on it all, and it was, and same in 1990, the same guy absolutely refused to put us on. So, and then in 91 we were in America, and we weren't here for it, and then it changed hands in 92, and the people that ran the Marquee started booking the band. So we're going to be playing it, but it was, we did our own tour after Pearl Jam. We should have, 1990, we should have gone to America, and we should have got on a big support tour with somebody. We should have, gone out and done a few long tours over there. But we had this big argument with Island Records, so we were kind of between. Even though there was no time, it was literally Left Island signed to EMI. We missed out on the opportunity, really, of maybe touring with the Cult in America, or someone would have been good. And it really would have pushed us up there. And in 1991, when we went out and did the album there, it was going really well. We were starting to get, I think, we'd sold tens of thousands of the first album with Island over there. But it's a different system. It's not so based on sales. Your chart positions are more based on radio ads. So the more radio stations play your record, that generates revenue, for the stations, and people go out and buy it, so they play your record more, which means then people go out and buy it, and that's how the record company get their money. It's a slightly different scenario, right. But we were doing okay. We started to get a lot of radio ads, and it was going very well. Then we came back after spending $250,000 making a record, which is like about $1 million now. And talk to the right people. We played towards the end of the year in LA with on on a bill with Soundgarden and Ozzy, and it was all going quite well, the way it was looking. And then Zomba, but exactly the same thing happened. What happened at Island? Zomba Publishing came in and bought out EMI, and everybody. We just spent 18 months putting this stuff together and becoming good friends with all these very high up executives. They all got sacked. Like the classic American, just like dumped new people came in, and they got rid of all non-American acts and said, "Bye, you've got to go back to Britain."
Right.
And then Pearl Jam's, I heard later that Pearl Jam's A&R guy approached our manager and said, "I'd like to take them on." So, because the Pearl Jam are always talking about Claytown and they're really good. And I think he'd been at Ireland for a bit, so he kind of knew who we were. And our manager never told us. We just sent us back to Britain, and we took up the option with a third record deal then with EMI Britain. And then we did the Pearl Jam tour, and then we put one single out, which went to like 74 over here with no video, no radio, no press, but sold thousands of records, and the record label went, oh, okay, but we had no one cared about us because they weren't. It was like we'd just been dumped on them. They weren't people that had been involved with signing us or anything. So no, we were just the American label have dumped them, and they knew obviously we'd been on Ireland, so there was no one was on our side particularly, and there was an accountant who fallen out with our manager over some EMF business, decided to take it out on him through us, and he turned around and said, "No, we're not giving them any more money because they're an American signing. They've had all their money from America already." So literally ran out of money, and just kind of like it's like being sacked from a job. Go, there you go, there's your money gone. It was like COVID. So then, like overnight, because you're self-employed, obviously, overnight you get, we were waged, we got money, we got tour support. We just done a tour, and that was, again, we sold out the marquee, even though we'd been away for a while, and it was starting to build back up. And I think there's the single we were going to release called Skybound. They did give us the money to make a video, and it was a good video. And then there was thousands of pre-orders, but this one accountant just pulled the plug and personally signed the paperwork for thousands of copies of the record to be sent to the tip. And that was it. And literally, it was just business every time. We just got crucified by just when stuff was ready to go, and the audience was warming to it, then boom, it was but then again, the fact that it still exists and people still listen to it now, and we can still, when we played those Nephilim gigs the other day, I mean, we've only done 10 gigs in a year, yet end up playing with the Nephilim at the Forum and sold out. And all three of the gigs, we did Manchester, Glasgow, and the Forum. And I'd not played the Forum since '89. We played there with, did some big TV show there for ITV, and we did Soul Asylum, Crazy Head, did a few good Support Wonder stuff. It was the first time I've been on that stage all these years. But one thing I noticed was when we came on, doors opened, the gigs were packed. But, I'm walking out, into a full audience with people, down the front.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, for fuck's sake. It's like you've got a little switch in your head that has to switch into Christian Riou, the singer from the Claytown Troupe now. This is, and you have to pull up this inner thing, whatever it
Right.
might be,
Yes.
frontman thing. I'm not a singer, I'm a frontman, and so the gigs have gone very, very well. And but I was really surprised because normally support band, you go in, it'd be like a third of the audience would be there, and milling about, going to the bar after people are still out having a drink in the cheaper pub around the corner. But everybody was in. It was just like absolutely thronged in front of me, and seeing people sing along as well, and the people cheering, the roars going up. You're like, fuck me, hang on a minute, this is the real thing. This is like, to these people, the Claytown Troupe and myself still represent, and obviously people have been listening to the music again. As soon as it was announced we were doing those gigs, and people went out, well, did that record? Oh God, I forgot about them. So go get the record out, and a lot of people have messaged me,
Yes.
saying, "Geez, again, I didn't. How I hear your music now it's not how I used to, and that's nice. I think a lot of people um, have I don't know, just it's tapped into this psyche of people of a certain age going, no, I'm not. I'm still in my 20s. I'm not my grandfather. It's like, we're sitting around talking about Dunkirk,
No.
talking about the trenches, and I'm talking about that time I saw the ruts.
So how do you then, when the band finishes then, how do you navigate the rest of the 90s? Do you...
Personally, well, I musically, I it was a choice. I could have carried on. The drummer and the bass player left to do their own thing, and I left Bristol and moved back to London. And I thought, you know, the only way I can make any sense of this is to tread a new path, and that for me, life is all about the journey, and it's not about one thing. It's like I've had lots of interesting paths. Still the same road, still the same
Yes.
destination, but I like to go on an A road, not the motorway. So you kind of get sidetracked, which I've done. And I ended up with my brother, ended up opening a chain of Levi jean shops. And we had a shop at a shopping centre in Sutton, and I get kids coming in looking at me going, "Did I see you playing with Pearl Jam?" And you go, "Yes, you did." And
Yes.
now I'm doing this, and I did do a band. I did with my friend Chris, who was saying earlier, that owns the Fleece in Bristol. I said to him, I said, "Look, tell you what, I will teach you." He was so wanted to be in a band. He'd never been in a decent band. I said, "I'll teach you what I've learned. I'll teach you some tricks, and we do a band, and then you can decide what you want to do." We did a really good little punk rock band. That's what I wanted to get back to those roots a bit, and it was. I was listening to people like Sugar and Bob Mould at the time, and Jellyfish, and just another
Yeah.
eclectic band tastes, and early Suede as well. And then. And then he went off to do his thing. He, got on his feet in London as well. And then I did the only music I did then was I did a whole bunch of songs with Durwood, the guitarist from Generation X, and
Fantastic.
Rat Scabies on some of it as well. And I think Glenn Matlock might have done a bit of bass, but me and Durwood, we decided to do a project where I would drive to his house and write lyrics and melodies, get to his house, and he's like a genius with music, and then and computers then, like an old Amiga 500, and I'd sing there's this melody and these lyrics with no music. I just sing them and play into the computer, and then the next day he'd have a song. So I'd say, like, oh, listen, I want this kind of bit drum and bass in there, even, or something. And we did a whole album, and it's the strangest, coolest thing. And I think it's only on SoundCloud. Now it sounds modern, but then it was like, what on earth? You know, people were like, this is crazy. But now it sounds, again, eclectic mix of stuff. And I did that with Durwood. He went off to America, and then I worked in went into the film industry and got involved, worked up at Pinewood. But always around the music, always connected, and still around it all. And then I was in broadcast, I was in TV production, and very involved with camera crews and post production for about 20 years now.
Right.
I've just got to a point now where I'm of an age where I can afford not to worry about career, and then the Claytown thing has happened.
Because it reformed a few times, hasn't it, over the decades? Was it just kind of these one-off gigs that you kept sort of occasionally?
Yeah, someone would ask. Someone would just I think the Whitby Goth Festival in 2004. I'd not played live for 12 years. And I thought, well, that sounds fun. Got up there, a few thousand goths, and again, just the reaction to that the band was great. So did a few more bits and pieces around that period, and then decided, well, this is like, I didn't have time or energy to push it further. So took a break, and then we got asked to play with the Mission at Shepherd's Bush Empire. So all right then, just did that. And that was my friend Ben, who's the guitarist in Sisters of Mercy, played guitar on that, because I sort of mentored him a little bit a few years before. I helped him move to London, and he's a very talented guitarist, and he was in Bristol, and I could see that he had such talent, but he needed to take it out into the big world,
Yes.
And he's been in the Sisters of Mercy 20 years now, with a nice career, fantastic. So did that then. And then the odd one, I think, we're friends with Balaam and the Angels, so I've done a couple with them. And then there was Chris, who runs the Camden Rocks Festival, in 2013, and said, "Oh, look, come and play Camden Rocks." So, all right then. So it's just been like, yeah, why not? Just play the old songs. But then the new group now is a slightly different flavour, because the audience has caught up with the heritage alternative rock bands now.
Yes.
It's now, because that audience doesn't want to go looking for new bands. They don't need to think about who's got new records coming out. If they, some band they've never heard of, they're not chasing the music anymore. They don't need to, because they can listen to the old stuff, and then a lot of the old bands are putting new stuff out, and often really good music as well. I mean, again, Suede, I mean, the new stuff, great, and it's only really him.
Yes.
And there are bands like Pearl Jam and whatever that have never stopped. So that's the audience has now come. And like those Nephilim gigs the other day. I mean, the London gig at the same night, the Stranglers and the Buzzcocks were playing at the Roundhouse, and both gigs were sold out. And it's a shame it wasn't the same gig. Probably we could have done Wembley with that lineup,
Yes.
and it would have. So you've got, nearly 7,000 people in Kentish Town and Camden going to see alternative rock bands, and it was a huge crossover audience, technically. But Yeah, it would have made a good all-day festival, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I just, I just kind of walked away from it. It was become yourself again, because you again, obviously the person you have to be a front man at that level for people to take you seriously is you've got to have a switch. It's like I've always been around the motorcycle community, and it's a little bit like the 1% outlaw motorcyclists. Can be brilliant guys, really funny, really intelligent, you're really kind of awe-inspiring fellows when you see, like, a patch club geezer on, it turns up and you go, oh fucking hell, look at it, that's the real thing. And they're funny, but they do have a switch. You mess around, or you say something against something they don't like, or something against, you go anywhere near stuff you shouldn't do, there is a switch, and they become the outlaw bike. They become the scary bastard, that everyone kind of thinks they are most of the time. And it's the same. I've often, I've known a few presidents of those clubs, and high-ranking guys, over the years. And again, intelligent, smart, good company, but have that ability. I've seen it where they literally could just go bang, and turn to the this Viking,
Right.
and it's the same thing with a front man in a band, and the difference why people go, how did you do what you did and I didn't, kind of thing. Well, it's a switch. There is a switch, and when someone goes on, it's not just going on stage. It's something in certain people where something just clicks, and again, it's the rugby players very similar. Where you could get rugby players there. My brother used to play for Bath, and I'd hang out sometimes with the Bath rugby players in the 80s who were top of the tree then, and they're all quite middle class, and they're all intelligent, but they go on the field, bang, they're killers, and you're like, Jesus God, it's just you're a nice guy. You just threw that guy halfway across a field,
Yes.
And it's the same thing, but that's a level, even like I say, with the bikers, the kind of the patch bikers, there is a level of professionalism about ending up in as that, or rugby players at a certain level, and it's the same with the being in a band. There is a certain point where the people that end up at the end of the chain have got that switch.
Yes.
It's a really interesting thing to watch, and I've obviously got that myself, because it's not, you don't spend your whole time going around being the lead singer of the Claytown Troupe, but I could walk out of this room and I'd happily walk on stage in front of thousands of people and sing the songs, and become, it's just in there. It's just some, can't describe why. But I mean, like yourself, the ability to pull together interviews and to put, there's a certain something that inspires that, and and I think again, obviously being a singer in a band is a very prominent thing, that we all aspire to being when we're young. But I just, it always seems so normal to me. I think I could just imagine myself doing it. And again, I think this strange ability to do it, and why I didn't end up not doing it. If you get the drift.
So when you got the call this kind of year and last year, does it feel like a very different sort of scenario now with the band and putting together of the band? Did you feel like this isn't just going to be a one-off for a couple of nights?
This one's stretching a bit further now. We've written some new stuff, and I'm really pleased with it. It sounds like the earlier Claytown Troupe stuff, but modern at the same time. It's really big, and I've got there's a producer's approached me and wants to do it. He's done a lot of good stuff. So hopefully we've got to start nailing that down soon. And obviously we've got to think. I mean, I'd like to be doing some festivals next year, but it's not when it's tricky because we're never really known as a festival band, and fitting into the festival circle, it's going to take takes a bit more work, but we'll see what turns out. I've had some. We've got a little gig coming up with Ghost Dance at the end of February, just to keep the oar in, and maybe we'll try the new songs if we got one ready by then to play live. But no, I think and there's a couple of bigger bands that have been talking to me, and their agent been talking. So
right,
there's a few offers that might come on the table of like, are you around? Are you available? Yeah,
yeah. Yes, quite.
So and again, it's the thing with having that history and having published works, our songs, the ownership of the, with Universal Music. Again, it only takes some, like the Chameleons had recently, it only takes some film set in 1989 and they're looking for, music to go with that, set in a certain period of time, and your song gets chosen and gets used on a a drama project or something, then you can you can get a whole new wave of attention, and that is the thing about having a published history, having published works. That could happen. It's not like we're writing songs to go into a film with the dream of it being used. It's like, no, we've got works that are published, owned by the biggest publishing company in the world, that the right person might go, oh, let's stick that there.
Yes.
And then, so who knows what's coming? I don't know.
God, it's very exciting. But the 80s has become such a sort of decade where people are sort of discovering. There was the mainstream, which is the obvious narrative, but then there's the kind of the underneath bit. And, there was so much music, and the early 90s as well. There was so much good music that it's kind of, people are fascinated with it, really, aren't they? That's one of the main things about this decade.
I'm sat in my son's room at the moment. So it's the quietest, and it's
The Cure.
And then what else? There's a Theatre of Hate T-shirt. He wears all my old T-shirts, and as much as he'll listen to modern stuff and to his own stuff, he listen to the Smiths. He'll stick the classics on, but to him it's not about the past. It's just about a wave of music, effectively, whether it's the Wu-Tang Clan or whether it's the Smiths. It's just there's a vibe of that goes with certain music that kids pick up on, and
yes. Well, it's kind of fascinating. But look, this has been amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's a nice chatting.
Yes, it's amazing to hear your story, actually, and because I think I did an interview with Is it? God, Anna from Ghost Dance. Is it Ghost? Was she in
Anne Marie? Yeah,
Anne Marie? Yes,
yeah.
God.
Well, she's
And
got a good wide story. Skeletal Family were popular on that scene, and
yes,
no, she had a nice little career.
yeah, no. And Ghost Dance seems to be sort of. If they can get, I think from memory, it was only a month ago, but getting the members of a band to stick with it and to, yes, commit to that time and is the tricky thing, isn't it, really? Where everyone's going,
Yeah. I mean, I've been quite lucky now with the guys I'm with now. It's more they want to do more against me not being able to do more. To fitting things in with life. It's like I wish it was 30 odd years ago. Then I didn't have a care in the world. And now, unfortunately, the responsibilities of life, the universe, and everything is trying to get everybody, the opportunity to do it. But fate will take over, as it does, and it'll decide.
yes,
What, and we'll see what comes next with it. But no, it's been an interesting year. So this time last year, playing in Dubai with the Mission, and then a year later, and only 10 gigs, a sold out forum. I mean, it's like there's not many people really even that could say they've done that. Really, it's quite a rare thing. It's not. There's no slog being involved. It's just people. The name Claytown Troupe, people kind of go, oh yeah, I remember them.
yes,
Yeah. What were they? Yeah, what was their music? People sort of, and then there's other people at the other end of the spectrum that just take it seriously and go, yep, you've got an audience out there still, and yeah, come and play. We Spare Destiny and Gene Loves Jezebel gigs we did earlier in the year, and that was great fun, and again, nice busy gigs, people enjoying themselves and well, standing and staring at you. Generally, it's an older audience,
yes. They're bit more fragile.
a lot more standing and staring.
But yes. So, have you got a website now, or is that in process?
Social media. I do own claytowntroop.co.uk, and I do know how to build websites, but I'm a bit slack with that kind of thing. Again, much to the chagrin of the guys, but it's a site, social media. I mean, websites. I could, Wikipedia tells the story,
Yes.
and the social media. I put things up as and when. At some point, I might do a little write up of the Nephilim dates, just waiting for the right moment, and I do like a day by day because there's some funny stories that happened with that, some amusement and some of the stuff we're just talking about, how shocked I was at the size of the reaction. I knew there'd be a good reaction, but I didn't realize it would be so good. Didn't realize it would be so big and so well taken. So because we were, I remember a couple of years ago, Ricky Warwick from the Almighty called me and asked if we wanted to go and support them because they were reforming, and we ended up not happening, and they girls' school did it. The heavy metal band, and that's that fine. That audience there, that it would work better, even though we were. We did gigs with the Almighty in the past, and we're friends with them. But now I don't. The audience, that audience, it's the heavy metal audience. I don't think it would have worked so much. To some degree, maybe, but with the Nephilim and the Mission, But then again, Claytown Troop, we could go support Simple Minds,
Yes.
and the sound would stand up in a big venue. Always, that's that's what it's got. It's got that something, a bit like, again, the Chameleons.
Yes, well,
know.
they have such an incredibly expansive sonic quality to them that
Yeah.
they're kind of songs written for a massive arena, really, aren't they? They're not jingly jagged.
Yeah.
It's not the Brilliant Corners or Mighty Mighty. It is
Exactly.
awesome.
Yeah.
And I know, God, why they weren't massive, I never know.
Well, no, we had their album in '86 in the house, where we lived when I was in Bristol. I never saw them at the time, and they disappeared by the time Claytown kicked off. And then I saw them, I think, with the Mission, maybe about 10 years ago, and it was like, okay, there was like, again, just I think it was an academy. It wasn't a huge audience. I can't remember now. It might have been, maybe it was the Wonder Stuff. I can't remember, but then they just seemed to have tapped into a nerve, and Vox, as he calls himself, the singer, he's good. He's a nice guy, nice bunch of people making a really good sound. They're good musicians, and they're a good example of what an alternative rock band should be able to achieve now. They're packing gigs out all across Europe and America, and making a nice little job of it.
Yeah.
Go, yeah, that's how it should be done. So, in fact, the Chameleons should be supporting Simple Minds. If any, they should be going up to that next level. I think next year we shall see. But again, a band that never had generic commercial success, that just have triggered something in, as people have found them. People had never heard of them before. I've just cottoned onto them, and either through gigs or maybe through some of the sync work, or just I don't know. It's just people looking into and discovering music from that period.
Yes.
And to say, I'm always up for anything from ye olden days. I mean, bands like Gang of Four still playing. You still got all those. Well, he's died, but they're still. I mean, look at the Sex Pistols with the singer Frank from Gallows. I mean, it's like no one ever dreamt of that being a thing, but it's hugely popular, and everyone's like, well, he's not Johnny Rotten. It's just got a lot of dissension from that, but at the same time, it's become incredibly popular. But I think that's also because they look at him and the audience singing along. Doesn't sound like Johnny Rotten. He sounds like him. Doesn't dance or move like Johnny Rotten. It's not a tribute act in that respect. And I think the audience can imagine themselves being him, singing with the Sex Pistols, being themselves singing with the Sex Pistols, because there's a guy being himself singing with the Sex Pistols. So I think there's something deep down, and people go, that could be me doing me singing with the Sex Pistols. In saying that, I have actually sung karaoke with the Sex Pistols. I'm the only other singer that's done that. I put together the camera crews in 2007 when they played Brixton Academy for Julian Temple. Like, they did this film of the band, playing at Brixton Academy. And on the Saturday, they wouldn't. Johnny Rotten wouldn't, and his right hand man wouldn't allow cameras on the stage. So Julian Temple was like, "What we're going to do? We need close-ups when they're singing backing vocals, and we need close-ups, guitar stuff."
Yes.
And we were like, "Well, the only thing you can do is film it Saturday during the day, so we can, with no audience, so we can bring the cameras tight, But Johnny Rotten wouldn't come and do it, so it was just the band. And then at Brixton Academy, and then myself and one of my crew guys, we said, well, we're going to have to operate the lights to flash on for the chorus when they can Pretty Vacant, Steve Jones, and when they're singing Matlock, and we know because we need the extra light for the cameras, and then the lighting people that were there, they said, well, the problem is we don't know the songs. So we don't know the cues. We don't know when the choruses are coming in and what have you. When you need all the lights coming on because we just had these old-fashioned big spotlight, but they were doing all the coloured stuff and the flashes, so we don't know. And I said, well, your headsets with the mics attached. Can you rig that up so you can hear it and put it through the PA? And I said, well, we can, yeah. So I know all the words. So I will sing along, so when it comes. so then I'm stood on the balcony with this spotlight, looking at the Sex Pistols at Brixton Academy, with headphones and a mic, and right now, I am an antichrist, and I'm singing along with looking at the Sex Pistols doing karaoke. So, and my guy was with me. He's like a big TV editor in America now, and we still remind each other of it because he was meant to be operating this spotlight, and he was on the floor for half of it, holding his stomach, laughing. So it was just the most mental thing, But I've done a few mental.
Yes, well, this is
story. I've got a lot of stories.
Well, yes, I would imagine. But look, thank you. Well, look, I'll let you go because it's been amazing. But thank you ever so much for your time. And if you want, I can always send you a link to this, and then you can put it. But yes, it's been amazing.
No, I hope it's interesting for your listeners.
Well, God, it will be. They all. I have to say, they love the. Yeah, well, there's quite a dedicated following of followers of this because they kind of know that I do get a lot of interviews, and they're often bands that you think, blimey, because a lot of people have now, we've heard the story of Johnny Rotten, and we've heard Bob Geldof, and we've heard Alan McGee, and we've heard the Oasis. You don't need to hear their stories ever again, but it's always the bands that were about. You think, oh, bloody hell, I remember that, So someone in America or Australia or in Britain, will just kind of suddenly get in touch and go, God, I just listened to that interview you did with so-and-so, and it was amazing,
It's cool. It's all pieces to the bigger jigsaw.
It is. It jogs people's memories. They go, God, I used to go and see that when I was, 16 or 18, and I sort of forgot about them. And I just, just want to I'm just curious, what did they sound like? I can't remember, and it's like, bloody hell, that's, because when you're that age, you didn't have access to listen to loads of music. You had to go and sort of go to a record shop, or you had to save money and you had to buy a record, or you had to tape a record. You couldn't just quickly stream some stuff. So
John Peel, yeah.
Dear old John Peel. But there's loads of stuff that just came and went, and I thought, well, never mind. Yeah. And then decades later, you can go back and catch all the stuff that you missed the first time because you might not have been into a scene because it was quite tribal, or you just thought, yes, I'll have a listen to that, and then suddenly think, oh my God, this is
no, absolutely. I mean,
that's where I'm not. I'm sure there's 16-year-olds discovering the band, but there's also 60-year-olds discovering he was discovering bands like there was the Chameleons. There was also a band from Manchester called Easterhouse, and I just remember.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
and they only did one album, or they did a second.
Yeah, I remember the name Easterhouse. Yeah,
but there's there's thousands all over Britain, all over Australia, America. There's all these bands who have got a back catalogue. They've had that kind of 5-year narrative, as I always go on about. The 12-month honeymoon, the single, the John Peel session, the album, the tour, another album, bit bigger, and then possibly a third album, and then
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the classic. Yeah, I mean, you think technically even the Clash only truly lasted about 6 years. So however it was, the original,
yes,
the classic Clash lineup, that was only like 5 years. And that's it. And I think I read an interview with Strummer saying that a band has, and it can do lots of other things. It can do even bigger things. But there is a period when the band comes to people's attention, and it's about 5 years. That's the classic thing before it turns into something else. Maybe bigger or maybe disappears. But see, the Claytown thing was, all I like is the idea people go out and listen to it and go, okay, yeah, a bit like, oh, that's all right, and that's it. It's just it's a few minutes of your brain taken over by something other than it's that's the politics and the hoo-ha that's going on in the world. Just a few minutes of listening to music, and then you forget about some of the other stuff, and that's, I think, what rock and roll and glam rock in early 70s, I think that's what that did. The height of the Cold War, I think that's what that music's why kids went, you know what, I'm into this. I'm into just doing my thing. I don't care, and I, it's never going to come again, but at the same time, because it's always there, now, music, media, and that's fine. But I think rediscovering some of the roots of modern music, what you're doing there is interesting. And again, you mentioned a band like The Sound. There's a band called Ist that we played with the Mission and the Chameleons, young alternative band, and the keyboard player there, I said, oh, your keyboards remind me of The Sound, who's using a lot of strings in, and he was like, oh my God, I can't believe you said, I'm so pleased you said that, because that's exactly what I was trying for. and he was younger, and I said, well, I never saw them. I bought the records when they came out, when they played Bristol, but they supported the Bunnymen in Bristol, but in 79. But I didn't. I was just a little bit too young to go to the gig, and I had to pick my gigs carefully then. And if I was allowed out to go to them up to Bristol, but yeah, he knew The Sound, and he was only in his 20s.
Yes.
And I said, well, listen to Swamp Children, listen to Certain Ratio. There's bands out there that, there's bands like Chat Show with the alternative rock scene Chat Show, Oxford band, good example, really good band, made a couple of 12 inches. The bass player went on to start Echo Belly, and the roadie was in Swerve Driver, and the guitarist just done 20 years as the sound man for the Prodigy and used to do the sound at the Old Trout in Windsor. So he's got this band that produced a bunch of, a few of them that did really quite interesting things, but the band that they came from, you might see the odd T-shirt at one of the, like a Balaam and the Angel gig.
Yeah.
But a kind of lost Play Dead, another excellent band that just disappeared, But anyway.
Yes.
Good chatting.
Yes, I know, but it's tempting. But yes, escapism, that's what we need. Okay. Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, and best of luck for
good luck
the future.
Good luck editing that.
Yes, I know. But thanks a lot, and best of luck.
No, I can share it out there with and people like to listen.
They do love to listen.
And pick up some new people from the Claytown side of the water,
Absolutely.
So, cool.
Anyway, look, best of luck for the future. Take care.
Good to meet you.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
And that was me in conversation with Christian Riou, talking about his life in music, especially around the band, the Claytown Troupe. If you want to know any more information, go to their social media page, especially Facebook, and see what they're up to. This has been the C86 show. David Eastaugh. If you want to contact me, you can via most of those social media platform sites. And all these interviews have been archived on Spotify, iTunes and Podbean. It's true. Have a great week. Stay safe.